So now I've been listening for my song. I was shopping at Acme this past week and listening for my song. I was having dinner with Eric and listening for my song. And mostly all I've been hearing are a lot of 80s songs. Some Pat Benatar, Whitney Houston, Tears for Fears. But sometimes I think I hear my song when I'm walking my dog in the woods, the autumn leaves showing off all their colors. Sometimes I think I hear my song in those final rings of a singing bowl's ring. Sometimes I think I hear my song when some of you, even though we're just still getting to know one another, when one of you shares your tears with me. But I don't know if that's my song I hear or something else. David Blanchard writes that our songs sing back to us something of our essence, something of our truth, something of our uniqueness. When our songs are sung back to us, it's not about approval, but about recognizing our being and our belonging in the human family. When we started this month of October, I wrote an e-news invitation around this month's theme of belonging. And I asked you to tell me why you belong to First Unitarian Church and what this community offers you. One person told me you belong here because you like to be around people with shared values. Another person told me you belong here because you like to be around a diversity of opinions and experiences. Another person told me that you're new here and still trying to figure out how you belong. One person described the care you received after divorce and the sense of belonging that this community provided you in a time of deep need. And some responses to my inquiry led to in-person meetings where I got to hear some of you struggle with a long-held sense that you have never really belonged anywhere. Some of you long to feel seen and understood. I'm aware that sometimes we can be surrounded by people and still feel very much alone. And sometimes we can go our whole lives without hearing our songs sung back to us. A friend of mine whom I knew from my Presbyterian seminary called me last week out of the blue and asked about Unitarian Universalism. He said he has been disenchanted with the Presbyterian churches he's attended and wants to try Unitarian Universalism. He thought he might find a better sense of belonging with us. And I encouraged him to try out his local Unitarian Universalist congregation. And I also told him that I couldn't promise him that we would meet that need that he is feeling. We are human too, just like the Presbyterians. And sometimes we disappoint one another. We get stuck in our bad moods or in our anger or in our impatience. We don't always reflect back to one another the inherent worth and dignity that we at our core believe in. And sometimes when people come to our congregations with hurt and fear, their pain becomes a distraction or a noise or like Big Rabbit's bad mood, and it gets in the way of their ability to receive affirmation and kindness. Sometimes people come to church for the first time having never heard their song, having never felt that sense of belonging in the human family. And they come into this space wondering whether they might find it here. It breaks my heart that so many people do not come into the world with their song being sung back to them. Or maybe they start out having heard the song, but something happens in their life and they forget. How then do you get it back? Author Naomi Levy writes about a story about a young boy who went out into the woods day after day. His father took note of this strange habit, and he asked his child, "My son, why do you go out into the woods every day?" The son responded, "I go there to find God." At this, the father gently reprimanded the child. "Don't you know that God is the same everywhere?" The son replied, "Yes, Father, but I am not the same everywhere." In Unitarian Universalism, we don't all share a belief in God. We might believe in some higher power, or love with a capital L, or spirit, or interdependent web. We might call it universe, or creation, or a stillness. We might call it wisdom, or wind, or rain, or mystery beyond our naming. A long-standing joke in Unitarian Universalism is that when Unitarian Universalists pray, we begin with, "To whom it may concern." But the point is, where do you go to find your strength, your wisdom, your goodness? Where does your heart overflow with love? Where does your essence emerge? Where do you experience your place in the interdependent web of life? Where do you feel a belonging, not just a belonging in a family or a community or a group, but a belonging in the whole human family? Where do you hear your song, no matter what is going on in your life? For me, I've spent much of my life searching for belonging, listening for my song. And the time was spent not so much trying to discern what my song is, but what my song isn't. I spent a whole lot of time in my younger years trying to look prettier so that I would belong. I spent a lot of time trying to perfect my behavior, always be especially kind, but not too kind as to be seen as weak. Always having the right thing to say, but not wanting to come off as a know-it-all. Always being perceived as clever or funny, but not so funny as to be annoying. And I tried pursuing jobs that people would find acceptable or interesting. This was before I became a minister, and I'll tell you, there's no better conversation ender, like on an airplane or something, than like, "Hey, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm a church pastor." So to belong, sometimes I want to be something that doesn't end the conversation or lead to an exhaustive theological debate about the nature of God while I'm stuck in the air with my seatbelt fastened. I've often thought that to belong, I had to prove myself in some way, prove myself worthy or good enough. What I've come to realize is that what I was trying to do was not to belong, but fit in. But fitting in is just an exercise in suffering. And so maybe we let go of the need to fit in and instead set a goal for belonging. But in her poem, Cauldron of Belonging, Susa Silva Marie writes, "Belonging's no goal. Belonging's no goal. Only the state of everything. Not a sense or feeling, merely what the stars do in relation. Belonging is the cosmic family name. When false aloneness sweeps through you, smile at the misperception. Bow to the misunderstanding. May the shaking hearts, yours, mine, grow as they quake. Let belonging reveal yearnings inside one another and a union unshakable. Close your eyes. find the world's cauldron of belonging. What if she's right? What if we already belong? What if we come into this world belonging? What if to belong to the human family, there are no right qualities you must have? There's no measure of fitting in that you must reach. There's no way in which you must be, or look that you must embody, or test that you have to pass. There's no race to win. You don't need a certain amount of money. In fact, you don't need any money to belong in the human family. You don't need to dress a certain way. You can wear your hair long or short. You can experience depression and anxiety. You can make mistakes. You can make a lot of mistakes. You can feel like an utter failure and still belong. You can be in need emotionally, spiritually, physically. You can be grieving. You can be scared. Your body can be slowing down. You can be divorced, widowed, single. You can have children or not. You can be the life of the party, or you can be socially awkward, and still you belong. You can be employed or unemployed, retired. You could have just been fired from your job. You can be trying to find your purpose in the world. You could be struggling with addiction. You can be loud. You can be quiet. You can be super fit or struggling with obesity. You can be estranged from loved ones. You can have cancer. You can suffer from migraines. You can be losing your memory. You can be tired. You can be utterly dependent on other people. You can feel like you have nothing to offer this world. Or you could be at the most exciting time of your life. You could be at the most frightening time of your life. You can be in an annoying and unshakable bad mood, and you still belong. Because here's the thing, you already belong. You always have. Religious life, if nothing else, is meant to be the one place where we don't have to prove ourselves, where all those external factors are not a factor in our belonging, where we can be in a bad mood and not get fired or ostracized, where our belonging in the human family is reflected back to us above all else. Even if you have never heard your song, I like to believe that there are people here who are waiting to sing it back to you. Your song is beautiful. It's perfect, really. And sometimes when I get quiet, I like to think that I can hear all of our songs. And the harmonies that we make are so perfect together. And I want you to hear your song too. I want to liberate you from seeking approval or trying to fit in or measure up, because I'm afraid too many of us have found fitting in to be the goal. And what I want you to experience is your belonging in the human family. And so maybe a good first step is to return to the simplest expression of human life, your breath. In the Hebrew tradition, the breath of God is breathed into us at our birth. Our divine breath is called ruach, and no one is exempt from it. The divine breath is what makes us human. In ancient Greek, the word for breath is pneuma, and it's used interchangeably with the word for spirit or soul that is understood to come to us from some higher power, some divine stillness. In Hawaii, folks greet one another with aloha. Ha is the divine breath. When I say aloha, I affirm seeing the presence of the divine in you. In ancient traditions all over the world, there is this wisdom that none of us has breath that is not from some enduring higher source that unites us all. And maybe you understand that breath as the ancient breath of the holy. And maybe you understand that breath as ancient atoms breathed in and out by our ancestors, by dinosaurs, by other living creatures, and breath that will be breathed out and in by our great-great-grandchildren and by future generations whom we will never meet, but to whom we are connected. When I was growing up, we had a stethoscope in our house, which my parents reiterated was not a toy. And I used to sneak into the cabinet where it was kept, and I would sit there and listen to my breath going in and out. And as a kid, I wouldn't have said that I was connecting to my humanity. But as an adult, looking back, I think that's precisely what I was doing. Connecting to the breath of life, connecting to what kept me alive and what made me human, and taking time to slip away from all the distractions that filled my head with ideas of not fitting in or not being enough. Our breath reminds us that we are enough. And so maybe in good times and in bad times we return, if not to our song, then to our breath. Our divine breath, which we first breathed at our birth and follows us through our life, which calls us back to our being and our belonging in this human family. And maybe if we do that enough, just breathe in the stillness, we start to hear our song and we learn to sing back another song. Your presence in this world is a tremendous gift. We get distracted, seeking approval from one another, but our work is to honor our belonging and the belonging that is inherent in one another. May we do that work well. I invite you to rise as you are able and sing with me hymn number 352, Find a Stillness.